Just before this video starts, I wanted to actually mention the term queer coding because I never actually referenced it in the video because I didn't realize what it was specifically until after I'd filmed and talked about the video, because my complaints was basically to do with queer coding. Yeah, that's what the video is actually about. Who'd have thought it? Queer coding specifically is the attribution of stereotypically queer traits to characters, fictional characters, without explicitly stating their gender or sexual identity. In this case, basically, my analysis of the video is criticizing people's reviews and perspectives on a character in a particular 90s film with Winona Ryder, and how they interpret her character in a particular light, which gives them a negative connotation towards the film. Not because they are homophobes, but because the character isn't actually what they are trying to push their mentalities onto. So yeah, just wanted to kind of touch on that before the video started, because I just feel like it makes it easier than having to refilm the whole entire video just to add this little segment, even though I still am by adding the segment. So enjoy, I guess. We'll see how it goes. You know, I'm getting tired of using Letterboxd on the occasion. Mostly because of recent, I've been noticing more and more reviews from people that get in the most amount of likes, whatever, so they're the first things you see. And they're one-line reviews about this or about that are usually not great discussions or representations of what the film is actually talking about. And I was watching Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael the other day, which is a great 90s, I'd say romantic drama about a character called Dinky, played by Winona Ryder. And she's a character who's very goth-heavy in her presentation, but not really. She just likes black a lot. I don't think it's completely goth, because it doesn't really scream. And like, in contrast to her character from Beetlejuice, it's probably less goth-like. It's more just, she has no perspective of value to herself, and her usage of black in everything, from her carpet to her dresses and to the messy hair that she has, everything, all of the decor in her bedroom is a reflection of that. It's like an absence of life, you know, much like how black is the absence of light. In her case, it's the absence of life. The fact that there's been no life given to her because since she's been adopted, her parents haven't really put in the love and care that they should towards her. They haven't been able to learn to appreciate her for the person that she is. They've been enforcing their own, you know, ideologies and stuff onto her. Like, they wanted a, you know, pretty in pink kind of daughter. Instead, they got someone who just doesn't appreciate those values, and they don't know how to appreciate her because of it. And it's one of those films where you watch it and you're like, okay, so, you know, she's got a crush on the boy in class, whatever. He's got very long blonde hair, which is very, very well kept. As someone who can't grow hair like that, the envy is very much there. But it's an amusing thing watching it and thinking like, yeah, you know, she's a nice character, whatever. Watch the film, she has a romantic interest, they get together in the end, but she still keeps enough of her formidable identity. Even the poster is a reflection of her in this pretty in pink dress, but she's still wearing her, you know, big heavy boots, you know, a very not thing that she, you know, if she was to become a conformative person, she would be wearing high heels and look prettier or whatever. Take, you know, Breakfast Club, how they made the alternate goth-like girl into like, look, she's got a bow in her hair, she had a shower, you know, it's like, fuck off, you know, changing someone so dramatically does not need to happen. If they can find their comfort level, then that should be good enough. That should qualify as what makes them a character, gives them their resolved arc. And it comes to this, in my mind, media literacy thing, which seems to become a hot topic discussion of past couple of months, where people are not understanding how films are actually telling their stories and projecting their characters. They're like, hey, this is what their character is, this is how their arc goes, this is how it relates to the story at hand. You know, it all works on a narrative level. It has a fundamental basis. But then you see the reviews and they're like, I would have done this differently. She should have done this. They should have ended up with that person. This should have happened. In this case, for Roxy Carmichael, a lot of the criticisms against it on Letterboxd, unfortunately, are all these people complaining that why isn't she this lesbian character that I see her as? Why is she going after this blonde guy instead of some woman like she should be? But then you watch the film, which I don't know if these people actually did, and you realize there's nothing inherently queer about her character. And whether that she needs to be or not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't serve the purpose of the narrative for her character to be like that, because the point of the character is to find her identity, and her identity isn't her sexual identity, it's her as a person. She's trying to form herself like most teenagers do in high school, figure out who the hell they are, and get kind of respect for the fact that despite the fact that everyone bullies her for being so different, that maybe actually her being different is fine and it's a normal thing. There's actually a scene within the film where she goes shopping with her school counselor, another woman who is the only person in her life who's actually shown her any kind of respect as an individual. And because of that, they go shopping, a thing that she's never, or even if she has done with her own mother, in this case her adoptive mother, she hasn't found that kind of level where they both want the same thing. So she has no comfort level towards it. And they're in the dressing room together and whatever, and the counselor's, undressing, because in this case it's a mutual respect, They're both mutually on the same level as a basis of friends. And so there's no sexual connotation within the scene. And, she takes off her shirt, whatever, to put on a different blouse or whatever. She's got a bra on. And Winona's character references, her counselor's breast, the fact that she's got, a larger size that she wishes that she had. And so she ends up sneaking her bra out underneath her shirt and then taking off her own top and referencing that fact even further. Of course, it's nothing that you're explicitly seeing on screen because it's mostly a mid-shot of her face, kind of like this, but closer. You're not seeing her chest, so there's no explicit nudity or anything, but it becomes a scene about mutual respect. The fact that the counselor has even, is stipulating, we're both comfortable with the way we look. We're both normal. It's a natural look. You shouldn't be wanting something else like that if you don't really need it. You need to be comfortable in your own skin. And she finds that to be a thing where she's now comfortable around this person that, to my knowledge, girls have this thing where they're perfectly fine with, getting dressed around each other. I'm pretty sure most guys do as well, boys' locker room kind of thing. There's no sexual connotation. It's just kind of general camaraderie. It's just general practice, And there seems to be a weird misinterpretation of this scene where people find it weird. It's like, why did she talk about her breasts? I'm like, do you not understand the context of it? She's not trying to point out her breasts for a sexual connotation. It's about comfort. It's about understanding the fact that people can look different and be different, but still be equal no matter what, and they need to find respect of themselves and that value and to share that respect among their peers, So it's becoming annoying that I'm seeing this more and more often. And now, as it is as a thing of people pushing their own interpretation of, oh, she's actually gay, she's a lesbian, she shouldn't be with this guy. It's like, but maybe not. Because if the film had this push towards the idea that, actually she dresses like this way because, or maybe even she gets called some kind of a slur that has some sexual or sexual orientation based, origin. They call her words and stuff. If they did that and they were emphasizing this at least through some kind of level of subtext that people interpreted her appearance as that of being someone who was queer, then yes, you could maybe put that on, but at the same time the film isn't doing that. She gets bullied because people think that she's weird and they throw things at her. But then they add to the fact that they never explicitly say anything about her sexuality. It's always just her being attracted to this one guy and he's attracted to her. And that's the level that they're on until they find a mutual understanding by the end of the film. They understand the principles of each of his character and learn how to respect that, but also learn that they still have more progress to go and have places to move to like advance both their relationship and their understanding of each other. It's a thing that isn't a sweep them off their feet character resolution, they make out and everything's happy and everything's perfect. It's like, no, it's still not perfect, but they're getting there. They're working towards it. They have an open communication. They have an open dialogue. They understand each other better now. And that's what the film needed to be. She needed to understand herself and identify who she actually is. And he needed to be okay with the fact that, hey, I actually like this girl. I need to be open about that factor. I need these people to stop bullying her just because she's weird and stop bullying me for liking her. And, how about that? And again, there's nothing explicitly in the text of the film outside of the way she looks on the odd occasion that makes people interpret her as queer. And there's nothing obviously wrong with a character being queer or interpreted as queer. Again, you look at The Lord of the Rings. A great example with Sam and Frodo, something that has enough subtext to build on the idea like, yeah, it's pretty gay, but at the same time, you can, there's obviously the text in the film where Sam clearly is not. Probably, or he's very closeted, but it's like, because he gets with the girl in the end, whatever. He's had that romantic interest from the very first, opening act of the first film, that it's like, he likes the bartender, she looks nice, he wants to probably marry her. Lo and behold, he does, and he has kids. Frodo, on the other hand, what a nice bachelor you've got there. Just no romantic interest whatsoever in absolutely anyone, but he likes rings. There's a lot of gay subtext in that film. It's very obvious, and I find that to be, a really interesting aspect towards the film, because it's also this factor of it's brotherhood, it's camaraderie, it's all this kind of stuff, but there is still that level. It's subtext, it's interpretive. With Carmichael, it very much did not feel subtext or interpretive. It's just I think people are projecting too much onto the films, that it's becoming that they are interpreting it only this way because of that. Like it's some kind of meme or whatever. It's the hot meme is to be like, I'm interpreting your character as gay just because I want to, even though it doesn't, not supported by anything in the film. There is nothing in the text of the film, even subtextually, to, actually base this off of, I just wish you were gay, because that's how I feel. It's like, you don't need to. Is this a problem with films with the fact that there's, especially prior to the 2000s, prior to the 2010s, there was not a large amount of diversity, especially queer diversity or representation in films? Yeah, understandably so. But at the same time, there's always room for subtext and interpretation in a lot of films. But sometimes films are very adamant about the fact that it's not a queer nature. That's not the interpretation we're going for. It's about female empowerment. It's about representation of female identity, how that has changed and evolved. That's something that's pointed out really well in the video essay on the Viavision release, talking about the film and how it's a great building block in this 100-odd year build up of all these female empowerment stories, and how it's led from the rise and fall to the rise again and all this kind of stuff. It's really interesting stuff. But again, you go on Letterboxd and everyone just hates the film because she gets with the guy in the end because she's gay. It's like, whether she's gay or not doesn't matter. But also, that's not in the text. It's not in the subtext. You're projecting your own thoughts and ideologies onto a film that doesn't share those. At least with Lord of the Rings, it's pretty goddamn obvious, but also it's still subtext because it's never brought up, it's never specifically indicated. You read the original books, it's very much there, to the point that biographers for Tolkien have had to say, he wasn't gay, shut up. But, and it doesn't matter, obviously, if the characters are actually gay or not, because, again, A, they're fiction, and B, it doesn't matter. If it matters to you as a person for the character to be gay, and you really want to have that punch, then sure, but then you're just going to make the same complaint by the end of the film that she gets with the guy, which was already set up in the context of the film. It was always going to happen. It was the romantic arc of the movie, and it's just that's where I'm starting to get more annoyed by things like that, where the way people interpret certain character motivations and character actions are changing how they are perceiving the film to a negative connotation. You know, where something in the film has a natural development from point A to point B, in the middle, or even before point A even really starts, the audience will have an interpretation of, man, that character's cute, I wish they were gay. What's that? They aren't in the end? Oh, well, fuck this movie, it sucks. The thing is, it can be a troubling discussion to talk about this kind of stuff because, of course, we want to have more, queer representation in films, and there's a lot of people who don't like any kind of queer representations in films, even subtextually. Hell, I know a guy who wasn't very happy when I made a joke about how, isn't it great how Sam and Frodo are gay? And he's like, no, they're not gay. I'm like, they're not, but there's enough subtext there for the interpretation to be there. There's a base level of it that it's kind of obvious. And it's like, it ruins some experiences for some people. For me in particular, it fucking doesn't, I have no affinity to whether or not the characters are queer or not. It just depends on how it's utilized in the story. Is it exploitative? Is it actually there? Is it subtext? Is it not existent whatsoever? Is it projection from the audience? There's so many different aspects to it that it depends on how it's utilized within the storytelling. Like, take Alien Resurrection, another great queer representation film from Winona Ryder, where you're thinking, there's queer representation in Alien Resurrection? Yeah, kind of. There's a vaguely, it's not even really vaguely, a pretty adamantly sexual relationship between Winona Ryder's character and Sigourney Weaver's character. Sigourney Weaver's character, who is very sexualized in the film. Not like she's butt naked most of the time, but like the way that she performs her character is a lot more sexual in nature, which seems, strange for her character, but at the same time she's also some kind of a clone that's scraped off from a little bit of DNA that also happens to have alien DNA going through her. It's a fucking weird movie. But her character has a connection with Winona Ryder's character, who seems very androgynous in terms of her looks, her clothing, both masculine mixed with a bit of feminine, but very, basic androgyny. Even the haircut is, short haircut, very boys' haircut per interpretation, which I think is also meant to be the point, but she's also, I guess spoilers if you haven't seen the film, she's also an android. And that's kind of a big deal, because it's like, well, androids don't have any kind of, sexual inclination towards other characters. So, in this case, it's Sigourney Weaver's character who's projecting onto her. She's also flirting with other characters. I'm pretty sure she flirts with Ron Perlman's character at one stage as well. But, so she's not, explicitly one or the other. Fuck it, why not be both? But it's that element of, there's enough within the text there that you can read it that way. There is a sexual connotation to it all. There is an identity towards it. If she's a robot, does she not have any kind of sexual fantasies, or does she not interpret things in a certain way? Does she not have romantic or sexual interest towards Sigourney Weaver's character? Because there's definitely a connection between the two. But that film, where she plays an android that has no feelings, has much more text to it to substantiate the basis that she's queer, in contrast to Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael, a film where there is no basis for any connotation outside of she dresses like a goth lesbian. But that's not why she's dressing like that. It's, again, to do with the character and the absence of any love and, care that's being put into her from any external force. And so she's just, bound herself by just the absence of any kind of love and light in her life. Again, black. It's one of those things, like I said, when it comes to media literacy, when it comes to people not realizing and not reading, interpreting, and understanding things the way that they're designed to be interpreted. Again, courtesy of subtext, sure. Very much so. You can interpret things in a different light because the text at least has some kind of supporting elements of that and that. But you can't always just watch a film or a TV show or read a book and just be like, those characters are gay because I say so. And then the story doesn't substantiate that because there's no basis for it. And then in the end result, look, these two probably straight people, because they usually are, get together in the end and live happily ever after. It's like getting annoyed that Cinderella doesn't have a crush on one of her ugly stepsisters. It's like, but there's no substantiating level in the basis of the text to make you think that she does, or the fact that she would even end up in a relationship with her, unless you're going from that strange mentality of, I can fix her. But it's like, firstly, I guess stepsister is popular these days. But like, but it's like, it's so far out there that there's no context whatsoever for it. There's no loving dynamic. There's no love-hate relationship. None of it. So it just doesn't need to be there. It's one of the many things that I found when it comes to how people interpret films, and it's always I feel like it's always the queer community, but there's always someone that has some kind of interpretation of a certain basis of things, like the idea of how a character should react in a certain scene when posed with danger, for example, like in a slasher film or in a monster movie or whatever, when they could do a rational thing here, but they're acting irrationally, and you're thinking, you idiot, you should have acted this way, which is rational, but they're in fact acting irrational because the situation is bringing out that side of the character. What's that? They're getting, chased by someone who wants to stab them several times. Yeah, you probably act irrationally as well. Some people don't have that automatic rationality. Also, the fact that it's a movie, it's bound to happen, both either because of the genre and the text of that genre, or just because they're getting chased by someone who's trying to stab them. That's not always an everyday occurrence for most people. So it's just as much about people and your interpretation of whether or not they're queer or not is the same about whether or not they're stupid or not for not running away from someone who's trying to stab them. Just because you think one way doesn't mean it bounces back onto the text and actually works. Doesn't mean that the text has to support your own ideologies and your own input. The text is a text. It's already been done. It's already telling its own story. You just have to watch and maybe appreciate it, or be like, you know what, I didn't like it. If I had done it differently, everyone would be gay, and also none of them would be gay. They'd all actually be played by Muppets. So yeah, they should be played by Muppets. Fuck it. Give me a Scream film where the only one who's not a Muppet is Ghostface, and the rest of them are Muppets. I would watch that. Anyway, that's all for now. Shout out to my queer folk, because you guys rock, and that's about it. Because I don't want to make it seem like I'm coming off as homophobic in this video, because I ain't. So, yeah. Cool. And watch Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael. It's a good film. Ciao.